never heard of before I moved to Asia. But they're actually from Australia, and they're quite good design firm. And so yeah, let's backtrack a little. I started at Morgan. Oh God, there's so much to say. I really don't know where to start. I did my internship with Chris Paffel at Parameter, and then I worked at Ziegler Sneed, and I had the pleasure to work with Doug and Charlie and Steve. And Steve was my mentor for my senior thesis. So right after I graduated, I went overseas, but I want to backtrack even a little further. Prior to that, I had kind of gotten involved in historic preservation. I was working as a historic renovation carpenter. I kind of got involved in local groups, Mount Washington Preservation Association, and I helped secure a bunch of conservation easements. And I won a couple awards for restoring a house in Mount Washington. And I was very much interested in the historic preservation. And you know, as I kind of got through school and I opened up to other lectures, I started reconsidering my outlook, because prior to that, I was a filmmaker and I went to like an experimental film school. I played in punk bands, I put out records, and I was like, you know, very much involved in contemporary art. So it was kind of a conflict for me. And as I kind of went through my studies, I was trying to think, you know, what do I want to do? And I kind of opened my mind up to more contemporary modern architecture, but still trying to understand context and how to build in context. And this was actually my thesis. I'll show you a little bit. So yes, I graduated from Morgan, and then I moved overseas to Spain, and I'll talk a little about that. And then I've, you know, eventually worked in Barcelona, London, Beijing, Hong Kong, Colombo, in a country called Sri Lanka, and then Shanghai, and then back to Beijing. So I've worked in over 6 cities. During that time, I traveled a lot, basically 50 countries during that time between work, or, you know, whenever I had a free weekend, I just, you know, pulled out that credit card and just took a trip. And just recently, I think last month, I finally paid off my credit card bills. So yeah, there was 4 years working in Europe on Middle Eastern and European projects, and then relocated to Asia. So for the last 7 years, working primarily for British firms, design firms, on, you know, Chinese, mostly Chinese projects, big scale, large scale projects. So yeah, that's kind of my background. Let's see, is the PDF open? Let me close this. And sorry, I thought I had the PDF open. Another technical difficulty. So yeah, this is my little CV here. This is what I would send out when I was looking for a job recently. And this is kind of like a list of the projects and the scale that I've done in China. And this is square meters. So just to give you an idea of the scale that we're working on. So we do a lot of projects that are sometimes master plans, mixed use, a couple office towers, 200 square meters, or a super tall tower, 500 square meters. So it's actually quite a large scale architecture, and kind of gotten used to working at this scale, and really appreciate when we get to do smaller projects. So I'll talk a bit about that. So let's go back to the beginning. I started out as a carpenter. I trained in millworking with a guy named Steve Hildebrandt from Swibo, a great guy. And so he kind of taught me millwork. And this was kind of key to me making a leap into 3D design, because it's a lot of, we built our own profiles and the band, and we would mill our own basically our own wood casings. And I became also the lead carpenter on the installation for the Charles Theater. So I installed the whole facade. I worked with Steve, we built it, and that was a great project. And then I also, on the opening day, got to show my senior film from film school. So it was quite a nice project to be involved with. I also kind of started doing my own projects. I got my contractor's license, and I would take historic barns and historic houses in Mount Washington and renovate them. This was my main project. This is the house that I still own. I bought this. It was in very poor condition. This is one of the first 6 houses in Mount Washington. It's actually, if you look here, this is the American AIA chapter, Baltimore chapter from 150 years ago. And one of these guys, this was his house, Thomas Dixon. He's also the architect for the Mount Vernon Presbyterian Church and the gatehouse for, I forget the name of that building. Anyway, very prominent architect in the 1860s and 70s in Baltimore, and this was his Royal Gothic cottage. So I bought it, was in very bad shape, and I restored it. And it took me about 7 years. I won the Mount Washington Improvement Association Award, a CHAP Award, and a Maryland Historical Trust. This is some of the interior. These are some of the details that I restored on the inside. And this was a great project. I got to live there for a little bit, and just kind of culmination of my carpenter career. In school in Morgan, this was my second year studio project. We joined a competition, and I actually was lucky enough to get 3rd place in an international design competition. And from that, AIA decided to sponsor me to go to the AIA meeting in LA that year, and which was a great honor. And I got to go out to LA and see the case study houses and go to the conferences and learn a lot more and get exposed to a lot more. This was my senior thesis project I worked on with Steve, and this was for a proposal for, at the time, the Contemporary Museum. So we chose a site which was a parking lot, and I don't know what it is now. And so I kind of went out and did field studies. I did all the CAD drawings for all the buildings nearby, and I tried to basically design a building that I thought would fit into the urban fabric as well as be something new. And this was something I was very concerned with at the time, I kept reading a lot of, articles, maybe with Ed Gunz or just, being part of the Mount Washington Improvement Association, just like, what can you do in Baltimore? It seemed very conservative to me, and I wanted to challenge that. And let's see, so here's some of my intern work. This is a project Charlie did. It's a renovation. I just did, what interns do. I went out and did measurements and, basic drawings. This is with Doug. What was this? The National Cryptology. Oh, maybe I shouldn't say. And then I worked with Steve on the Rashfield proposal and the Gilman Library extension. And then these were with Parameter. This is Silo Point. I got to do reflected ceiling pans and then some elevations for the Learning Center in Hamden. So these were great experiences. And it was really fun to work with those guys. Here are some of my classmates at Morgan. I was there from like 2004 to 2007. Jay and I, after we finished our studies, we did a gallery show in the basement at the AIA, and that was a great experience. And then I graduated. You can see me. Here's Jay and I'm running across the football field with my degree. And I was very happy to move on to the next chapter. At the time, I was exposing myself to a lot of lectures. I really didn't know architecture. I kind of came to architecture later. And my friend said, your bus pavilion is really nice. You should see this artist, Zaha Hadid. She has a gallery exhibition in the Guggenheim. So I went up to New York, and this is 2006, and that was like a fantastic show. And then there was another one at the MoMA called On Site, New Architecture in Spain. And, here's looking into the door there. And this just kind of really opened my world to this amazing, contemporary architecture that's going on. I also went and saw Robert Stern speak in Baltimore, and I was very turned off by his speech. He was just very kind of arrogant and he's just really talking himself up. And I was just like, which direction do I go? And so I chose Spain. And so this is kind of like, this was the invitation for this lecture, and it also kind of represents me. I had kind of 3 offers floating when to go to Spain. So right after I got my degree, I packed my bags, and 2 weeks later, I was in Spain, and those offers had dried up. Excuse me a second. And there was nothing there. So I basically pounded the pavement for 2 or 3 weeks. I went to every design office that I could in Barcelona. There were about 35 of them, and I finally got lucky to get an internship. Okay, so this is the Bilbao Effect. This is right after Frank Gehry's has done the Guggenheim Museum. Every city in Spain wants one of these to be something special. So Spain is investing a lot of money in contemporary architecture. And this was very exciting to me. These are some of the buildings that I would see. So I was doing an internship, and on the weekends, I would just, they had these like, $50 airplane tickets. You could fly somewhere in Spain and then rent a $20 car, a little Pepe car. And I would drove all over Spain, and these are some of the wild things that I would see. This is an airport. This is Frank Gehry Winery. This is just a bus station by a professor, a Spanish professor. This is Enrique Moralius Bridge. And then there's Santiago Calatrava. Is just one of my favorite architects. Does just this really wild, innovative work. I'm sure if you haven't heard of them, you should look them up. But it's great work. And then this is Herzog de Meuron. They basically took this brick warehouse, they cut out the bottom floor, lifted it up, and did this amazing structural lifting to open up and invite you into this museum. And with this green wall, this was a great project. And then on the top is RCR Architects. They did boxes. They did fantastic boxes, and just like lifting, pushing, and pulling. And I would say in Spain, I saw just a lot of box projects. Amazing boxes, anything you can do with a box. And you'll see later on, I'll show a bunch of buildings that are inspired by form, but I think fundamentally learned a lot in Spain by seeing what you can do with a box and what you can do with a budget. And that was just a great lesson for me. This is Manzilla Tuñón. These are 2 great, this is the Museo de Contemporary Arts. And this is a music hall. This is David Chipperfield. This is MVRDV. This is a housing project. So I got my first internship with this guy, Fermin Vasquez, and he was a local architect collaborating with Toyo Ito and Jean Nouvel. So I was very fortunate to get my first project working on a Jean Nouvel tower. This was kind of post opening, just doing building a model. And I got to build some models for Toyo Ito, and this was just, straight out of school. I was so excited. But that job, I couldn't pick up Spanish quick enough, and they quickly learned that I wasn't really adding to the conversation. So I was back on the street, and a couple of weeks later, I landed a job at Enrique Moralius' firm. And I really encourage you, if you haven't been exposed to his work, it's amazing. He's considered one of the best Spanish architects. And he unfortunately died in 2001 during the construction of the Scottish Parliament. And he just, I think one of my favorite stories about him is that he got to a point where he just was really tired of being of other architects, or he felt he had learned everything. He took all of his architecture books and he threw it out in the dumpster, and he said he's never going to look at anyone else's work. And he just drew and kept drawing since then, and just created some of the most interesting work. This is a roof that he did in a fruit market in Barcelona. This is a gas natural tower with a huge cantilever. This is archery for the Olympic Center. And he does amazing parks. Now, one thing I did learn there, what we did was just a lot of copying. Since he was not around anymore to design, we copied a lot of designs and did competitions. And we did what was called the Moralius Curve. He takes a line and another line in landscapes and gives it a fillet. And this seems very basic, but this is something that at the Zaidid office, they had basically picked up on this, and this was one of her favorite architects, and she uses this a lot if you go through and study her work. So I did some animations, I did some 3D modeling. And yeah, I worked on basically two or three competitions there. And then this is 2008. And then the Spain, the economy tanks. They're like, they just say, you know, we're sorry, we just can't, we have to let a bunch of people go. So this will be the first of, you know, the economy kind of affecting my career. So where do I go next? I got very lucky and I landed a job at Lead Architects. And, you know, I still not sure how I did it, but you know, I was very persistent and you know, I jump in, and I think I was brought in because I had construction experience and I was a little more mature than the design team. So I was running the consultants between the, you know, MEP, the structural, and the client, holding the conferences with all these on this first tower. This is in Dubai. This tower never got built because this collapsed during the 2008. This was a competition we did in Bulgaria. Kind of a fun project. I won't go into details, but you know, this is some of the modeling I did. And then this was a master plan for a park in Nicosia, Cyprus. And they're building a bridge and a public park around an old wall. This is a walled fortress city, and this is the old wall of the historic city. So here I am getting to do contemporary design within an you know, existing a historic setting, which was very exciting. Then this is, I'm jumping around a little on projects. These are some of the Middle East projects I worked on. This is in Cairo. This was an exhibition center. There were 3 exhibition centers, hotel and apartment towers. I just kind of did some elevations and some 3D modeling. And then this was going to be, believe it or not, Muammar Gaddafi's son, Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, they wanted to build the UN of Africa, and this is what this is the People's Congress Hall. So this was going to be the UN building of Africa, and then basically this is 2011. Arab Spring hit, and the office lost, you know, 8 projects in 1 week, and so they took a big hit. And they tried to hold on for a while, but basically they had to let a quarter of the staff go. And that was another time where I'm without work. Do I come back to Maryland, or where do I go? I decided to go back to China. Now I'm jumping around the timeline a little, but I want to basically introduce China. What is China? China is like an enigma to me. When I took my first plane ride there, I felt like I was going to fall off the edge of the earth because it was so far away, and I had never been there. I never considered living there or learning the language. And in school we didn't really study it. I mean, this is you know, it has a history. This is you know, some of the historic architecture, but you know, famously Mao Zedong, when he took control, he, you know, demolished a lot of the historic buildings and wanted to bring them into the future. And under the Soviet influence, there's nothing really to speak of during the 20th century. And so there's a big vacuum. And then as the economy opens up, as you know, and the economy starts building in the 2000s, it starts to become like a testing ground for new architecture. And because, you know, all of this Soviet or communist architecture is failing, and all these buildings need to be renewed. So they're basically wholesale blocks that are getting torn down and redeveloped. And this is a really exciting time. And so I'll briefly go through the Beijing Olympics. This is Herzog Muron and Ai Weiwei. They did what's called the Bird's Nest Stadium. This was a very exciting project at the time. And so as you can see, this is kind of your context. This is the best context you have. It's like concrete 8-story buildings, and maybe from the 1960s, and then maybe some residential towers from the 1990s. There's not much to go off. So you have basically an empty slate. Stephen Ho, this is another Herzog project. This is in Hong Kong. This is very interesting about building with brick context. This is the police barracks, and they had to insert some new buildings in there. And these are some basic steel rain curtains. kind of like a modern interpretation of a brick. And they kind of improve the public spaces. And so Herzog Muron does a bunch of neat projects. This is Stephen Hull. This is back around the Olympics time. This is a residential project. And what he does is he lines the perimeter with the buildings and kind of links them by sky bridges. In the interior is this fantastic public space. And there's an art cinema in there called the Kubrick Theater that shows art movies. And then, you know, there's just some really nice, just public spaces, areas that you can hang out in. He's also done a project in Chengdu called Sliced Porosity. Similarly, he's running the perimeter with his buildings and creating these really dynamic public spaces on the interior. And then a project in Shenzhen, this one's called the Horizontal Skyscraper. And he runs this campus, Urbanki, and he does these really nice connections and basically lifts the buildings off the ground plane. And there's a lot of very interesting public spaces underneath there. Okay, this is, oh my God, his name has just escaped me. British architect. It'll come to me in a second. He did the Shanghai Pavilion. Someone wants to chime in? What? God, I can't believe a bunch of my friends work there. So this is a really neat Shanghai Pavilion that I got to see in 2010. This is all seed banks. And these are all plexiglass rods that kind of let light in. And this is the interior. So the light is coming through the seed banks. And this is just, you know, a very fun pavilion. From this, he gets what's called the 1,000 Trees residential project, mixed use. There's retail in the base. And basically each building has its own tree. He's done Thomas Heatherwick. There we go, Thomas Heatherwick. This is on the Bund in Shanghai. This is a performing arts theater that has a facade of that kind of mimics bamboo. And this is actually like a kind of, what do you call it? This facade rotates. Each of these 3 layers will rotate and create like a very interesting, it exposes the building in different ways throughout the day. And you can open up the gallery and to experience the inside. That's a very nice public space underneath. This is another favorite firm. This is a German office, GMP, and they're doing very nice boxes in China and very nice details. One thing about Chinese projects is that they are built very quickly, and sometimes they're really good for photos far away, but if you get up close, you just bite your fingers. Like the details are horrible because it's built so quickly. And one thing we talk about is how to control the details. As foreign architects, we are not licensed to practice architecture. We are basically a design consultancy, and the only ones that can stamp the drawings and do the construction drawings are what are called the LDI, the Local Design Institute. So we do work on a conceptual level, and then we kind of review the drawings, and depends on how the contract's arranged, is how closely you can manage the details. And KPF, Foster and Partners, and GMP are the 3 top firms that basically they're able to get their specifications into the contract and really manage the details. They do nice work. And let's see, this is called Taikoo Li. This is a retail street. This is a very innovative project that tries to mimic the street corridors from an old hutong, very close, but having 2 or 3 levels and creating a 3D space of a shopping environment, an outdoor shopping environment. This is one in Chengdu called Taikoo Li. And this one has a more kind of traditional inspired architecture with a modern flair. That's a very nice project in Chengdu, another city in China. This is GMP again. This is a very nice office building that they did in Shanghai. And this is a training facility in Shanghai. These are like 4 or 5 boxes, and they do a really nice perforated metal screen. And then this is a performing arts center in Chongqing that they did. You know, this is maybe one of their more sculptural projects, cultural projects. This is BIG. This is, they're just doing some very, as you know, Bjark Ingels does some very just simple news, and kind of designs within a budget. And this is a very nice project tower in Shenzhen. And then this is SOM in Beijing. So again, I'm just trying to go through and give just scratch the surface of some of the projects that I find really interesting and that I found when I arrived or that got built after I was here. Now, this is an architect, a Chinese architect, Ma Yan-song. He worked at Zaha Hadid at around 2002 or 3, a couple of years before I joined. And then he went back to Beijing and started his own office. And he works in this style, but he's just taken it so much farther. And he's gotten, maybe 20 or 30 projects built here. This is an opera hall, very nice interiors, very sculptural. These are the more sculptural projects that get built. And this is in my neighborhood. I live right down the street from this. This is an office building. And then right next to it is apartment tower, and there's some retail around it. Very nice mixed use project. And then across the street from that is a TV station. This is called the Phoenix Center. If you look at the section, it's basically 2 towers, and there are sound stages in there. And then there is basically a tourist wrapping around it. And this is then has some really nice kind of atrium spaces. It's just a fantastic building. This is another local design institute. It's very interesting because it's not a foreign architect, and it's a source of pride for people in Beijing. So let's go back. So I'm working at Zaha Hadid 2008, and I just get there, and within 2 months I get this email. We just won this project in Beijing. Does anyone want to go? And I'm just like, that sounds great, but I want to kind of stick around and see what happens. So I'll come back to this. And then this is the last project I worked on. This was a competition in Nanjing that they won. And these are 2 towers and a youth Olympic center and a hotel. Very nice mixed use project. And then this is another office building project in Shanghai. Friends that were sitting next to me were working on, and that got built, and I got to visit it. Very lovely building. So my turn comes in 2010. They won another competition. These were 2 towers. And so I jumped on that, and I took the flight to Beijing, and I joined the team, and they immediately had problems with planning. They needed to come up with a new design. And I was just one of like 5 people in the office that day. We all came up with a proposal. They were even walking into the room. They almost forgot my model, and they took it in, and they came back half hour later, and they said, they love your option, Matt. It's going to be built. And fortunately, my option got built, got detailed. My friend came up with facade design, and I ran the structure team. I built the structural model in Grasshopper, and was fortunate to interact with the LDI there. So this was like just an amazing, stroke of luck to be in the right place at the right time, and this project got built. And I can see this out of my apartment window, and I also can see it from work. So it's kind of special to me. It's a lovely building, and it also has a really nice plazas and public spaces. The landscaping is really quite nice, and there's a sunken plaza that this kind of steps down, and there's some waterfalls here. And if you go there on the weekend, there's just tons of people out playing and utilizing this space. It's a great source for the neighborhood. It's not the best for retail. That was kind of designed last minute, but so it has some failures. And of course, there's some office spaces that have some, diagonal columns that make it kind of challenging, but it's got a wow factor that's fun. A good friend of mine who was sitting next to me got to work on this building, and he stayed here for 5 years. And they just finished this a year or 2 ago. And this is, I believe, the world's tallest atrium. In China, it's all about trying to do the biggest this or that. And so this is a 200-meter tower. It's basically 2 towers that sit above a subway station. The subway divides the building. And so then the foundation kind of splits over the rail tracks, and then kind of winds its way around and creates this really interesting atrium as you connect the 2 towers. Another friends of mine got to work on this. This is the largest airport in the world. This is Beijing Airport, just opened a year or 2 ago. I had actually moved back to China after Zaha Hadid, and I joined Foster and Partners, Norman Foster. and I got to work on their competition entry. So it was Richard Rogers, Norman Foster, and Zaha Hadid, and maybe one or two others. And so Zaha Hadid won, and this got built, and this is probably the best detailed building. These two are actually really built quite well. These are unitized glass curtain wall, and the LDI did really good job with this building. So the first Zaha buildings that I showed you in Beijing, China are, the details are pretty poor. They're built really quickly, but by now the quality's improved. Now I'm working at Foster. I joined, this is a project in Nanjing. This is, I think, a 300-meter tower or something. I can't read the bottom of my screen, but and I kind of got into Grasshopper, and I started scripting, and I used that for a couple of years, and then I quickly learned that the kids younger than me were much better and much faster. So now I just kind of monitor it, but this was a great tool that helped just scripting. I was able to run the structural models and help build the facades, and just really helped make things go a lot quicker when you're doing projects. This was a competition. This was going to be the tallest tower in Suzhou, another city in China. This was my sketch in the first week. Suzhou is about silk, and we have to basically develop a narrative. And I said, well, this is a silk ribbon, and this winds its way down around the podium. They loved it, but then we switched to a more kind of geometric, Bucky Fuller inspired shape. Maybe there's the New York Tower, I forget the name of it. But at that time, we were kind of chasing these geometries, and I was the principal modeler. This building, we were in a competition against Gensler, GMP, and GP. Maybe it was GP, Getch Partners. And this was 820-meter tower. Well, actually, it's 500-meter tall with like a 200-meter spire on the top. It was crazy. We didn't win. Gensler won, and I'll bring this back up in a couple minutes. So this project, these are some of the sky lobbies. These are the atrium in the hotel, and this is looking up the facade. So I basically did all the modeling and the renders for that. It's a great project. I was kind of upset they left me out of the competition, and I made a poor decision. I was upset with management, and being working in Hong Kong, I wasn't in the main office. I left Foster & Partner. I think that's one of my biggest regrets. I wish I was kind of still working there, but I moved on, and I worked with some other offices in Hong Kong. This is a residential proposal. We're just doing a facade for an LDI residential towers. I scripted these facades for an office development in China. Then we kind of did a proposal for an airport, like an office complex next to an airport. So we had to do a low rise, and I was kind of inspired by the Stephen Hole project. So this is kind of my horizontal skyscrapers. And I started working for another guy doing some contemporary townhomes in Hong Kong, and kind of jumped around a little. And then, one day I was just sitting out of work, sitting on the beach, drinking beer on a Monday, at 1 p.m. And I got an email e-box. In my inbox, guy says, I got a great job for you in Sri Lanka. It's for a guy named Cecil Bauman. Are you interested? I'm like, he's my hero. I would love to. So let me give you a little introduction on Cecil. He is this really kind of guru structural engineer. He worked at Arup. He started in 1969. And he kind of tries to study nature and integrate forms in nature into structure. And he started in 2000, what's called the Advanced Geometry Unit. He basically hired a bunch of mathematicians, engineers, architects, programmers, and artists, kind of pull this group together to see what can you take from music and artwork and nature, and can you study the patterns, and can we bring that into our structural team? And can we start coding it? And they start doing coding, and which is kind of very influential. And one of the first he's kind of the forefront of bringing Grasshopper script coding into geometries, into architecture. And he also did what's called the Serpentine Pavilions in London, starting around 2000. Every summer they invite an architect who hasn't built in England to do pavilion. He did the structural engineering and design work with Daniel Libeskind on this one. This was Alvaro Siza, and this is OMA. And he works with Alvaro Siza. He basically does the structure, and they do this draping pavilion for an expo in Portugal. And this is a draping piece of concrete that encloses a public space. It's just this amazing catenary arch. This is one of the first projects with OMA, with Ram Koolhaas. It's amazing. This is a house for a handicapped fellow and disabled, sorry. And there's amazing cantilevers. There's one post and one beam basically holding up this building. And then they just kind of keep pushing, and he helps OMA basically do these amazing cantilevers, amazing structures. This is Seattle Public Library, which he engineered, and then they do the CCTV in Beijing. And basically, he likes fractals, and so this is a starts out with a structural diagram of the tension that a cantilevering structure would have. So he basically turns those into fractals. He says, let's show it. Let's show the structure on the outside. And it's just amazing building. It's like a loop. There's a podium, and this is like a loop building. This is my favorite, Toyo Ito. This is, he and Toyo Ito did this pavilion. It's basically a box that you rotate a box, inscribe it, inscribe another, and it just basically becomes this pattern. And then they kind of do a devoid mechanism where some is lighting and other is solid wall. And this was a Serpentine pavilion they did. This was for the London Olympics. So fast forward, I'm working in Sri Lanka. These are some sketches. He's teaching at UPenn at the time and flying to LA on a project, sends me from the airport some iPhone sketches on an app. He's like, this is what I want you to do. And I basically developed into this model right here. I do all the Rhino modeling and all the designing, and I'm living somewhere back here in one of these buildings, and I get to like look at the site at my window at night and travel Sri Lanka during the weekend. So I'm there for 2.5 years. I do the whole facade package and the construction drawings. And this is for a retail mall. This is the largest project in Sri Lanka. It's on top of a parking garage, which is backed by a hotel, and then there's office towers. It's a crazy project. It has some crazy cantilevers. I think it's a mess, but it's also kind of fun. And these are renders of my work that I kind of stick out. This is the shopping mall. It has outdoor pavilions that face the waterfront, and it has outdoor dining. I need to keep rolling. This is a resort that I helped design with them. These are kind of inspired by honeycombs, and they each turn and face the ocean, and this kind of has resolves in a final geometric area with a pool facing the water. Just really nice project. I think this is under construction too. And then I moved back to Shanghai. I get a design director job with a lady who works at KPF, and we do a bunch of proposals. And this is for a 500-meter super tall tower in Xi'an, another city in China. And these are 2 proposals that I did. And then this is the atrium that I modeled and designed. This project, I don't think it's under construction. I don't think it is. These are some, this was a project in Shanghai. The basement had already been built, and the developer wanted a new office, like a newer design. So we tried to design with outdoor terraces and try to create some outdoor spaces. This was some spec offices that was going to have air conditioning units in the windows. And I had to come up with a pattern to basically hide all of those grills so you didn't see the air conditioning units in the face. Then I moved to Gensler, and I worked there for almost 2 years. And these are some proposals. This is a tower. I did the sky lobby there. I want to kind of I see I'm running out of time, so I'll flip through a bunch of these. This is another tower I did with 4 sky lobbies that one faces each other, each direction, cardinal direction, east, northeast, west and south, and they spiral up around the tower. You can kind of see these sky lobbies. Okay, so the tower I told you that I did the competition, it came back. I kind of got the job against it because they saw that I was the competitor at Foster and Partner. And this building actually, I was on the design team. This is the tallest residential building in the world, 500 meters. It's under construction. These are some early design drawings that I helped do. This is the finished rendering model. And here's the tower poking above the clouds. This is actually the basement. This is a real picture of under construction. There's like about 100 people down in this basement with a bunch of cranes building it. That was a great experience to be involved in. This is a 4-tower complex that I had a big hand in designing. This is 70-meter towers, and we kind of connected it with some bridges and created some interesting public spaces in the center. And this is under construction right now. They're building the basement. This is the interior. This is another proposal. I'm going to fast forward through a bunch of these. These are a bunch of proposals that we did that didn't get built. These are some other office towers in Tianjin. Okay, so now here we are, and I'm back in Beijing. I get a job as a design leader, which is basically design director. And this is like a promo page that shows me speaking and some of the designs I've been working on. My first day on the job, I work with some guys. We do a 3-day proposal for a mixed-use project in Shanghai. This is an office tower, mixed-use office and hotel that we won, but it basically stalled. This was a hospital complex I just threw a facade on. And we didn't win this competition. This was another spec job where we do a mixed use with the residential and office and some retail buildings. And we try to talk about the public space and creating, this is the basic process, how we divide the site, subdivide it, create courtyards, terracing, and we create a lifestyle areas and shops, and we talk about connectivity. In China, it's really about a narrative. You really have to develop a storyline to explain your design to the developer. And this becomes a crucial part of the presentation and the beginning of your presentation booklet. This is a project that we won the competition, but then we lost it in the second stage because it was too complicated for them. But we tried to basically, the narrative was about, there was a local park that talked about local folklore with a deer, stone, and water. And we try to integrate that into the facade, into the terracing. It's basically a renovation project for a shopping mall. And I basically tried to say, look, take your existing thing and let's create some interesting terraces and create an interesting experience. That was a great project. This was like a 1-week study I did for a car headquarters, Lotus cars. But the design team decided to go with another option, but this was based on the lotus flower, the racetrack, kind of coming up with a narrative. It's on the waterfront. We tried to weave the water through the campus, and we tried to build the forms off of their branding and their logo. We try to talk about that a lot. This is another office complex that we did, and I should skip through this. This one's kind of confidential. Looks like it's going to get built. This is a very nice headquarter building that we designed, and this is kind of the narrative that we built. Again, I'm trying to skip ahead to get to, this is my main project. This is what I want to talk about. So I came up and I helped the team, I led the team. We won this competition. This is what I've been working on every day for the last year and 2 months. This is the team. So it's a big group of people. These are my directors and these are some design leaders, but I'm basically leading the whole project and I'm responsible for a lot of the design, but we have a lot of talented people working on this project. It's an office tower, hotel and residential tower. We didn't win this plot. These were some more office towers, and it's the Forum, which is a government building, and then a retail street that surrounds it. Let me skip through. This is the shopping mall. So this is the forum. This is basically like what I call my baby. I work on this so hard, and we actually got planning approval last month, and we're having the ground cutting ceremony next week. And I'm very excited and proud of this. This is basically like a conference center. We have 3 levels. We have an atrium in the center, and we try to basically lift it to invite you into the interior, and you can see the park and the waterway on the other side. So we make it very transparent, and we kind of make the conference area a little more opaque. This is kind of the entranceway. You can see the entrance lobby there. We like to we build a retail street, and it's called Eco City. We like to use terracing and outdoor spaces to basically focus on the plazas and also pay attention to the forum. So you can do outdoor dining and face this government building. We're trying to link the landscapes. So the big challenge in China is like, how do you build in context? If you have no context, where do you create context? So, and this actually is out. A lot of what happens in China, instead of building in the old part of the city, they'll create what's called a new CBD, Central Business District, and they will create, build out in like a farm. This is a farm right now, and they are building, and I've seen a couple of these been built, one in Beijing, one in Guangzhou. You come back 5-10 years later, it's a city. It's as big as downtown Baltimore, and it just blows my mind how quickly these things rise. And I'll go back here in 10 years, and this whole master plan will be built. And so it's such an amazing adventure to be part of this. We're building the headquarters, the central part of it. This is in Shenyang, which is not far from Wuhan. It's a 2nd-tier city to Wuhan. And so again, I'll skip through a little bit, and I think I need to get back to the questions soon. But let me just flip through. This is part of the narrative that we build. We try to talk about, we're influenced by the waterways. We're influenced by this is the master plan that we developed, the butterfly shape, the tree of life. We try to intertwine this into a narrative. And yeah, let me just skip through a little more. This is the forum again. These are some of the elevations. Well, this file's a little too big. This is our competition plan. This is the sales center. This one, actually, we did the design last November, and they finished construction in January. Like, this was amazing to see them build this thing so quickly. This is the lighting design. And here's it under construction. I got to visit and do a site visit, and this is the finished project. So things get built really quickly here. Yeah, there's some things wrong with it. You don't want to get too close, but it's kind of a trade-off. Okay, yeah, I'll just flip through more, and then this is the lighting design for the forum. This is some more renders to show you what the building will look like. And this is the retail street. These are some of the buildings. We try to talk about the Han River. There's so much that I'm skipping over because I had to talk about so much. And I apologize for that. This is our, we have basically gotten planning approval recently too. There's 3 stages. We got through the first stage. This is the retail street, and this is some of the anchor stores. And so we're very excited about this. These retail buildings will, this is a performing arts center in there. And this will be like kind of a bar and restaurant on we call it our anchor store. And we are inspired by this is like wheat blowing in the wind, and that's kind of inspired our facade. It's part of the narrative, and these are some renders of our retail street, and these are some of the plazas that will be part in the center of these areas. This is another corner building. This will be a tea house. And yeah, I think that's about it. I would love to open it back to some student questions, some colleague questions, some AIA questions. Why don't you guys join in and let's talk a little more. Um, Gabriel, would you like to lead this or?
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Matt. Thank you for
Oh, wait,
sharing.
one other thing. This is my journey. Here I am at outside of Sneed. This is the first great group of people, second that I get to work with. This is Barcelona. This is London. This is my second London office. This is the Beijing Zaha office. This is Foster and Partner. There's Norman Foster here. This is another 10 Design in Hong Kong. This is a Sri Lankan gang. I'm doing a speech in front of 3,000 people in China. I did a couple of these. These are crazy. I'll tell you about that another time. This is with Gensler and Shanghai, and these are some of my crew here in Beijing. So I get to meet wonderful people, work with lots of amazing people, really open my mind. I can't tell you how much traveling the world and working with many different cultures really opens up your worldview. It's a great experience. Sorry, Gabe, go ahead.
Oh, no, so it's really amazing to see your journey and really to see that you, in many ways, you thought of something that Baltimore didn't have, and you seem to have landed in it in such a major way. And I'm really curious, your reflections on that. I mean, because you really do have the small, highly detailed project, and then these massive sort of projects that are emerging and seem to move at lightning speeds.
Yeah, it's a big question. Well, I was really fortunate to work on some great projects in Parameter and with the guys at Sneed and Charlie, and those are great experiences. And like, I learned a lot from them. And then going to Morgan State and my design studios and focusing on, kind of evolving like about historic preservation. And it seemed to me, these guys were all like doing really nice contemporary and still have done really nice contemporary architecture in a historic setting. And that was something that I was really eager to challenge, like time just doesn't stop. If you go to Rome, it's just like so many different styles over hundreds of years, but from one eye, it all looks like historic buildings, but from the trained eye, it's like tons of different styles. So I have this concept that, like time keeps evolving, and like 100 years from now, all of these buildings we're working on are going to be extremely dated. And, I don't know in which way they will be, but I'm really, eager to be part of like continuing the development. And, that's really what I sought out, is to try to continue and work in contemporary architecture.
Is there any thoughts? I think this is a student question. Thank you for the presentation. How did you manage to get in the position to travel? And I know you mentioned that earlier, but any thoughts for someone who's might be entering the field and sort of what the world looks like? Because it really, you've seen as an employee and, as someone working in the field, you've seen a really extreme contrast between what your home city had to offer and sort of these capitals around the world.
Well, that's a good question. Moving overseas is like a huge challenge. Number one, you need a visa, and you can start with a tourist visa. And that's what I did in Spain. And then like I overstayed my visa and I went to Switzerland, I renewed it. And, and then I finally landed a job with Adid, and they gave me my first work visa. And then, consequently through all these other countries, I kind of would send out feelers. I send out so many letters, emails. And like I said, I pound the pavement, and, I'll get an interview. And nowadays, doing Skype or Zoom interviews, and you can really just kind of reach out I reached out to Spain while I was still at Morgan, and I wrote these people. I said, I think you're doing great work. I would really love to come work for you. And I think once you do that, you open yourself up to this amazing world, and people, in the beginning, they're willing to pay you nothing. And that's a whole nother conversation, right? Working for free or paying you nothing. Let's not go there. But you have to reach out. And once you get there, then you just, I think the first thing with me is like, oh my God, I can't find the food I'm used to. And like, trying to live in another country and getting used to like what, like in Italy, I finally found a falafel stand and I just like kept, eating falafels. And, like you just kind of find a way to adapt your stomach to living overseas, and then you get a work visa, and then you kind of meet people, and eventually after 6 months, you start to develop maybe a social life and have friends, and just kind of, it trickles on after that. But I have to say, by speaking English, that opens your world up to so many markets. Like I've been able to work in former British colonies and, China, like Hong Kong and Sri Lanka and, in London, of course. But Spain was a challenge. The language was a challenge indeed. And China, I still am not, I can barely hold a conversation, and I'm just at the mercy of like very helpful people, and I'm still trying to learn. So, I took some Spanish classes before I went to Spain, but that also can help to open up your perspective.
I wanted to mention for anyone who's here and wants to get AIA points, there's a link in the chat box. I just replaced it. Is this, and then ask if there's any concluding questions. I see we're at the end of our hour. How did your focus and interest change as you continued through your career?
Is this a question? Because you're breaking up.
To work
How
at
did you
scale.
focus
Thank you. This is, yeah.
Okay, yeah, the scale is something that just basically came with the offices I worked in. I didn't seek out to work on the big scale. I never thought I'd end up in China. I just kind of just got lucky, and China was like the next Spain, and it still is. And I would say, I've had this conversation before. Middle East is the next emerging market, and everyone knows Dubai, but the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, there's like amazing things happening there, and then all in Northern Africa, and all over Africa, there's a lot of projects happening there, and then other areas of Asia, Thailand, Cambodia. All of these emerging economies are great opportunities to go and chase this kind of dream, and so I just kind of ended up working on this scale. I really don't like it sometimes. I really just want to work on like a small building. It sounds spoiled, and I'm not trying to sound arrogant. It's just kind of what comes with the pudding. And like we don't get to focus on the details too much. We're, working at the more front end. So yeah, I've often wondered, like, could I go back to USA? Number one, I've been using metric system for 15 years, and I don't know what an inch is anymore. So I'm a little worried about that. And, codes, you really need to know your code. So I've learned a lot of Chinese code. And I think they're more or less, interchangeable, but I don't know American building code, and I would have to rely on, that as well. So those are things that I've missed by working in different economies. I feel like sometimes I feel like I could never work in the US because I've just been doing a different kind of scale and different types of projects. I think that's wrong, though. I think you can always do it something. Do I have a lot of creative freedom in my position? I had to fight my way up. I started out at the bottom as an intern, which was hard. I started, at age 35, 36 as an intern, which is like a little older. A lot of my bosses were older than me. And, this got me in trouble. I kind of like talked back a few times I shouldn't have. And I was used to working for myself and just kind of being headstrong. So no, I just got lucky on that Beijing building. So I got built, and, a lot, I would say that's the other thing is you go to these big offices, there's opportunity, like, because there's so many projects going on, and you just get thrown on a project. And then, a lot of my friends were just like kids out of school, and they end up doing this tallest atrium in the world, it's just kind of a lot of luck and being in the right place. So like, put yourself out there, get involved, and then you just kind of like, well, get an opportunity. And when you get an opportunity, you work until 2 in the morning and you just work as hard as you can, however long you can. And that's what I've done. And I just keep doing it. And yeah.
I see Steve has his hand raised.
Steve.
Yeah. Hey, Matt. This was great. I think a good lesson for the students who are listening and watching is that every journey like this, and this is an amazing journey, starts with a single step. And I'm really very proud that Ziggersneed was one of your early steps. And I just think it's important for the students to realize that just take it, just go for it. So
Absolutely.
Thank you for this.
Oh, thanks, Steve. Another question. I wonder how much they changed from original sketches. There's a lot of fluidity in the beginning. A competition, the design is changing, but once like the chairman or the decision maker likes a design, then it gets locked in, and then the design gets developed. And that's what you fight for. Is it's very extremely competitive, and you fight and you work your butt off, and you hope that yours gets picked, and you hope that it gets locked in. And that's, yeah, a lot of then it doesn't really change. Then you just kind of go through all the stages of getting it built.
Let's take a last question from Jennifer Gatton, I think.
Yes. Hi, my name is Jennifer Gatton. I'm a freshman, and my question was, how, as a rising architect, did you deal with criticism to your work in your drafts?
Yeah, it's a good question. When I was at Zaha, I was not the smartest guy in the room. No way. I was the dumbest guy in the room. There were so many talented people there. And I just felt completely overwhelmed. And just this guy from Baltimore, right? And they all went to, how do I say it? I just worked really hard. I got lucky. And, my boss even took me off the project, said, you're not that good. And I could have given up so many times. And I remember talking with my mom, should I go into project management? Should I stick with design? And she would encourage me to stick with design. And I butt heads with bosses, over my design. And I guess I just don't give up. And I think I would encourage you to do is just design is subjective, and if you know that maybe you're not doing the best that you're doing, you just keep doing it, and you will eventually become, a good designer. You just don't give up, you keep drawing. What Gabe probably didn't tell you was I was not the best hand drawer. In fact, I can't draw. I actually, the only reason I got in was because I moved quickly into 3D, and because I can't draw. I can sketch on a napkin, and I still basically work that way. I sketch an idea and then we work in 3D. But I absolutely encourage you not to give up. Never give up. If you think you can do it, go for it. And if you don't think you can do it, keep trying.
Thank you.
That is so true. Thank you so much for joining us today. Do you want to, I don't know if there's any individual questions, but certainly if any, with student questions, if you have questions beyond this, I can certainly steer them towards Matt. And I know that we'll try and catch up sometime over the weekend.
Hey, Gabriel, I have a thought. Maybe if people have to drop out, we don't have to end it at an hour. I'd be happy, I see an AIA question here. Maybe we can just keep rolling until people completely, until I run out of something, people stop talking. If you have to drop out or other people, I would love to just keep it because it's for me answering questions. So let me just say that. And are you okay with that?
I'm great. I'm great with that. So
anyone want to drop out,
to go to their next meeting or class should feel free, but everyone else, it's we've stepped off the podium, if you will, and that is around for questions and informal conversation.
Okay, I have a question from Rob Valenti. Any reflections on differences in construction techniques or procedural innovations that enable the massive Chinese construction boom? It's very technical. That's a good question. as I said, we don't control the construction documents, so we're working more at a conceptual scale. But we do get to, like, I really try to load our DD drawings with, I really try to solve the details and then kind of pass it off. So I can only say construction techniques, they work 24 hours a day. They have 3 construction crews, 3 shifts, 8 hours, 8 hours, 8 hours. That's innovative. There's so many comments you can make about that. It's there's so many reasons, and it's a big conversation on why they can build so fast, and why the economy is emerging and why they can do the buildings they can. I'm sorry, I don't think I can answer that question better. Okay, graduate age 40, someone who's graduating at 44, old intern. Bro, man, I was 36 starting as an intern. I didn't really, I was struggling at the same age. Like, I've just in the last 4 years, starting age 46, made my way up. It's like you've got a world experience, and offices value that. You have like an older sensibility. So if you're 44, it's never too late to join in. Just jump in and go for it. Let's see. Let's see. Questions. Thanks for everyone thanking me. I'm looking for a question. Oh, the languages is the place I traveled to. Well, I can say hello in maybe 10 or 12 languages. I can carry a conversation in maybe 2, and I know maybe 3 or 4 total, but I really can't speak in any other language in English. There's a great joke. If you're 2 languages, you're bilingual, 3 languages, trilingual, 4 languages, you're quadrilingual, 1 language, you're American. Like, it's true. Like, we can't really speak. We don't grow up, like bordering other countries. So it's been a big challenge, and I've just, now I've got Google Translate, and I rely on people helping me, and I just try and find any technical tool to help me translate. And I'm always translating my documents and just struggling through the presentations and everything. Is there anyone that would like to unmute the microphone and ask some questions? Or type in your question?
There's a question here about scripting and modeling for 3D work. And I think.
Sure. Okay, what's the best software? I think Evan. I think I stepped into Evan's office in 2005. And Evan is one of the nicest people I met at Morgan. I'm really happy to see he's still working there. And I think he said something about Rhino. There's this software called Rhino. You should check it out. And it was the best advice. And I really kind of moved from 3D Max to Rhino. And Rhino is the 3D modeling tool that a lot of these offices use. And then there's BIM modeling, of course, Revit. Once the design kind of gets locked in, you move into BIM modeling and getting it. And it's a great tool to get this into construction drawing. So AutoCAD is kind of getting phased out. You do a BIM model. I think you all know this, but and then there's kind of plugin scripts. Grasshopper is the tool that we've been using for the last 10 or 15 years. It's very good because it's graphical, and you can see where the language, if something's wrong in the chain, the logic chain, you can see it and then you can fix it. Whereas a lot of coding before that was, if you had the syntax wrong, it just didn't work. So I really urge you to try and learn Grasshopper. Just start with basic tutorials and just get to know it. You don't have to become an expert, but it really, really helps you, and it would really help you in your career. And then there are, of course, plugins for Revit that help scripting as well. But those are the 2 tools that I taught myself. I actually hired a guy when I was at Morgan State to teach me 3D modeling on the weekends, and I just really pushed to get all the tools that I needed to kind of make myself available to take it to the next level. Scripting and modeling. Can you explain some differences? Parametric design with scripting. Okay. Parametricism. What is parametricism? It's thought of as like the next design school after deconstructivism. Let's go back to modernism, postmodernism, deconstructivism, and then parametricism. Parametricism is kind of like developing a logic, a system for something that such a big conversation. But I urge you to like read Patrick Schumacher, the design partner. Indeed, he has some essays that he wrote in the early 2000s on what is parametricism, and it's you know, it's kind of like, the best I can explain it is like showing a body in motion. Like, how do you capture a body in motion? How does a building turn? And how do all of those components turn with that building? And, you know, so parametricism is kind of going beyond like box architecture, and it tries to capture organic shapes, tries to capture, you can do box architecture with parametric apertures, the sizes of the window modules. All of this stuff becomes very expensive. So it's quite a challenge to do parametric modeling with a budget. Here's a question. Is there any class you would recommend unrelated to architecture that you think would be valuable to a professional architect? I think anything that's related to art, or I mean, I always found math, geometry is like, you know, my foundation. I always loved math. I grew up listening to punk rock music and playing in punk bands. And I think that's like, you know, you really need to like really challenge and like, you know, really challenge things. And that's kind of my ethos, like a DIY mentality, do it yourself, and really just kind of get out there and try different things. I'm always challenging the client and the consultants and really trying to push them. You know, everyone wants the quickest, cheapest result, and you really kind of have to push harder for something different. So like, yeah, I would say rap music, art, go to art shows. I went to, you know, I went to the Building Museum in DC. I went up to MoMA. I went to, you know, as many gallery shows as I could when I was in school, and that really opened up my world. And I would really encourage you to do the same.
I've dropped the link for the Patrick Schumacher
There you
article,
go. Yeah, great. That's
because I think
perfect.
it's a really great introduction to, and you know, advocate for this. I have a question just in terms of adoption. Are all of the firms that are working at this scale now using Rhino Grasshopper as their method? I mean, is it that?
I would say, yeah. Yeah, I would say pretty much every office that I've worked in overseas is using as their 3D modeler Rhino. Well, there was another one called Maya, which was more kind of blobby architecture. And that kind of came from the film world, animation, CGI, but not used as much. Rhino's kind of really filled in the gaps with what you could do with Maya. And then, you know, Autodesk Revit is the BIM tool. Actually, Foster & Partners was using Bentley, I think. They, you know, there's a few, you know, ArchiCAD. Some are still using ArchiCAD. But, you know, BIM is like, you know, teach yourself BIM, do tutorials. Like really, you know, if you don't know how to do it, just open yourself up to it, because it really is amazing that you can load a model and then just generate a whole drawing set from it. It's really convenient, and you know, we're starting to use it a lot here. They talked about it when I was at Parameter, and like we never used it, and like it's taken like 16 years to really start using it. Yeah, any other question? Can people unmute their phone, or can they just text? I would love to get more questions.
Hi, I think I unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hey.
Hi,
Rob.
great. I'm really fascinated by your presentation. Thank you so much. I've been interested in this amazing construction boom in China, and I'm trying to figure out, just wrap my head around it. I mean, you spoke a little bit to how they're able to build so fast. I'm curious if you have any insights into sort of the relationship between private developers and sort of the regulatory entities, just how things get approved. Are they managed nationally, regionally, by city? I mean, did you have any connections to that process by which a huge project that has massive civic impact gets
Right.
sort of decided upon?
Yeah, it's a big multi-tiered answer. I'll try and pick apart a few pieces. They have what's called state-owned companies, which are kind of quasi-public. And then they have private developers. And, the Zaha projects are all with Soho China. That's a private developer. Very interesting story. She just really pushed her buildings as her art pieces. And state-owned developers, so maybe cultural projects are with state-owned developers. Okay, so you have the China code, the building code, you have each, I would say state has their own building codes, and then you have your local building codes if you have a city. So it's, similar to USA, and you have to go through planning departments. And of course, you have to, get planning approval. But as soon as you get planning approval, they can start driving the pilings. And many times, I would say, we have just finished the concept design, and the LDI is starting on the construction drawings for the structure. And they'll be driving the pilings while we're going through schematic design. And then that's like either a 1 month, a 2 month, or a 6 month process. And then we'll go through detailed design for the facade. And by the time we get through that, they're up to the second floor of their structure. They're out of the basement, and, so like they kind of, it's kind of this massive overlaps between the design stages in the Design Institute. That's another reason why I can go so fast. Maybe you're doing the same in the USA.
It's curious, Matt, that it sounds like that fast track, what we think of as fast track, is actually the normal track. Complete, the idea that the structure is happening before the building's finished.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
The question is, is there a financial issue with that? I mean, I can't imagine an American contractor either the owner accepting the sort of blank check of building an undesigned building, or the contractor of delivering there's sort of a blank check implied in that relationship.
Well, I don't know if you're reading the news, but there's a big building developer called Evergrande about to go bankrupt, and it's supposed to be the Lehman Brothers moment for China. So that's its own conversation, and I might be, facing that soon. But yeah, how do they structure their money? I don't really know, but the way that's done, Evergrande, I understand a lot of people pay for their apartments up front. There's some overseas investors. And then, there's just kind of like a revolving docket of, one project funds the other. And, it's also like, because I don't know. I don't think I can answer it better than that. And there's a lot that I don't know. Sorry. I want to say something like, it's an emerging economy. You have so many wealthy people from, have became wealthy in the last 20 years. And how does this, is this because of the inflation of the yen? I don't know. Like, it boggles my mind too. I don't know. There's a lot of competition to get things built, to be the first. A lot of projects I showed you were like the biggest, the tallest, the blah, 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 so that also pushes it, a lot of ego, and also to get it built, the quicker it gets built, then it gets occupied, then you get the money flowing too. So, you get the rental income. Fire away. Anything else?
Have you found any renewed interest in historical architecture in China? And how might that, it seems like everything is unrelenting modernism and a huge embrace of the most advanced forms of construction. what's happened to, it's slightly ironic considering the ancientness of China. Maybe that's not ironic. Maybe they're done with that.
What was the first question? Have I found what? Any?
Have you seen any interest in incorporating historical preservation?
Okay, that's, that's a good question. Historic preservation means different things in different countries. I think you're aware of the Disney effect. You like save the facade, you tear down the building, and then you put like a whole new building in, and it's kind of like a theme park. Like there's a lot of that going on. And whereas in Baltimore we're more in, try to preserve the history, the interior. We even try to keep the we try to preserve a lot more, let's say. So there are districts that get renovated, but there are a lot that are still getting demolished. When I arrived in 2010, they were demolishing like a big district around the Forbidden City, and I wrote Zaha and I wrote her a letter. I said, look, you have a lot of clout. Can you help? Like, let's orchestrate. Let's try and save this district. And I got a letter from Patrick. Pat Zaha, really appreciate your thoughts. Thank you. That was it. But and then that district got torn down a couple of years later. But it's there is some preservation, and there is some intertwining of like historical context into these buildings. I just showed you like some of my favorite projects, but as I said, to build a narrative, like we're always talking about bringing the culture into the project. The facade sometimes resembles some of the local culture. We're trying to find modern, creative ways to speak and tell a story. And, it's not just international style. We are trying to like create something that gives an identity to a local culture. So we spend a lot of time on that. And maybe it's not visible if you first see it, but, and sometimes it's too, tacky and too much, speaks to something. So you have such a range of like things that are out of context to things that really fit in the context. Really, I've just scratched the surface. There's so many projects going on here, so many that are just so interesting. And there's just a lot of stuff that there is a lot of creating modern interpretations of historical building styles and also preserving historical buildings. There's a lot of power plants that get like turned into like art buildings, what I mean, art buildings, like the Turbine Hall in London, that's a big influence over here. Hey, Charlie, are you there? Do you have any questions? I would love to hear from you. You unmute your phone. Charlie, unmute.
Okay,
There
can
you
you
are.
hear me?
Yeah, hey.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah, why don't you stick it to me? Give me a good question. Put me on the spot.
I haven't got any right now. I'm just sort of overwhelmed by all of the ideas that flew by.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It was like a kind of a quick skimming through. I wanted to touch on the whole adventure from start to finish, and maybe it was a little too fast. Maybe I should have stuck and focused on a few more things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a long journey. It's been a big trip, and we keep talking like, when do I come back or do I keep going? I'm really enjoying it still, and I'm finally got to a position where I'm, really leading the design and working on some great projects. This project I told you about is, it's just great. I mean, it's just amazing. I'm really excited about it.
Well, I have a hard time with dealing with the scale of some of these projects. My Miesian sort of base kind of doesn't allow me to think that way. And that's, I guess, because I'm 92 years old.
But you did a master plan in Brooklyn of a large scale project, right?
Pardon?
Didn't you do a master plan in Brooklyn, like a large scale planning project? That's like the same scale of what we're.
Oh
working
yeah, yeah. It was a huge project. It was in well, it was in the New York suburbs, out near the airport, and
Yeah.
that got blown away by finances and a recession and a battle between the mayor and the governor, and it got so political it just never went anywhere, unfortunately. But anyway, it was fun while it lasted.
Yeah, the scale is large. It's, I mean, sometimes I'm just like racing. We have 2 weeks to do a competition, and like, it's like 6 buildings, and it's like a whole city block. And like 2 of the towers are bigger, taller than, like the buildings in downtown Baltimore. It's just like, what, like, so you're working at this like whole different scale. And I think you just kind of get used to it after a while. And that's what I said, like, I worry about if I like work at a small scale, I like have no tool set for that. But maybe
Exactly.
maybe I do. I don't know. I'll find that out one day. And I think Charlie and we chat through emails. He had another criticism that like we focus on if some of the facades are too busy. And I trying defending myself, Charlie said, well, these clients, they want something to speak to them. So how do you do just like a simple, like lovely glass box, or do you put like, do you develop the facade? And in these competitions, you really got to grab their attention. And this, I think Charlie would still rightly say, yeah, it's still too busy for me. But like, you have to capture the attention in the competition. And so we kind of like do dramatic facades or dramatic massings. But the thing that I keep going back to is like simplicity is key. And I think Charlie reiterated this to me, is like, no matter how big the scale is, you just go for a simple gesture. That's the best and always the winning entry, is like, try to go for a simple gesture, try to do something that's just very simple. And like, I see so many people around me trying to do, overcomplicated things, and that's always the wrong path, I think. And I completely agree that like, never forget simplicity, and like at any scale, the simple gesture like just is the best design method, I think. So thanks for reminding me of that. I completely
Yeah, that when you're dealing with basically competitions all the time, it's hard for me to say what I'm thinking, but I'm so concerned about the final project, and I'm so detailed oriented that to win a competition and then not follow it through is just sort of unthinkable to me. It's like laying your eggs in somebody else's nest and hope for the best. And I guess you do get pretty good products sometimes, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, let's go back to my CV. Like, how many of these are paper projects? Like, I think I've got 50 projects that never get built, and maybe 8 that got built or under construction, or maybe even less, 4 to 8. And it's, we do so many proposals, so many competitions. It's kind of heartbreaking, but then you're also learning, and you're learning from each one, and you're kind of, just developing a skill set. And, it's also not, now we have to do not just animations, we have to do a little movie sometimes, a 15-minute movie that like, it gets really complicated. So I have to write a screenplay for like a script for like a 15-minute movie to tie in like render stills, animation, and like, this goes back to my film school, like, kind to like understand how you put together like a film piece. And then I've also got to give a presentation. So like, there's so much to it now. It gets more than just sitting down and just drawing on a piece of paper. It's quite a diverse tool set to do these competitions. So yeah, there's a lot of work that gets left behind, and yeah, we're working, you know, but I'm always trying to think about the details even in the beginning. So I think you can't skip over the details. I think you just try to learn to work at both scales at the same time.
The other thing too is that, you know, it's just such a total difference in approach to design and the approach to actually the practice is what I'm talking about. And here, there's, you know, it's always a competition, but the competition is based on fee, not on design for the most part. And the style of competitions that you're involved in are supposedly have primarily to do with design. I'm not sure does money come into it.
Well,
doesn't look that way. When you look at the scale of the things and the bizarre complications, that cost doesn't seem to be an issue.
No, that's a very good point. In the beginning, in the the 2000s, anything goes in China. And then another big event is 2015. Xi Jinping, the chairman of China, said no more weird architecture. So that's the first thing that started to tamper things down. And the clients are getting much more sophisticated. And so they're not going for the Zaha style so much anymore. I showed some, you know, GMP. They're going for more boxy architecture, actually. And I'm doing a lot of proposals now that are a lot more box oriented. And that's why working in Spain was a great opportunity for me, because I'm not just, and working for Foster, I'm not just exposed to the crazy forms. So yeah, you're absolutely right. The client has spent a lot of money on unbuildable buildings, and they've kind of talked to each other, and they've gotten smarter over the last years. And so we've lost a lot of competitions that are just too over the top, but you still gotta go for it sometimes. And so it's always a fine line. Like, go ahead.
I was just going to say, perhaps I missed something, but are these invited competitions or are they false?
Yes, they develop client relationships, and then you do sometimes you do a RFP, and then they narrow it down to 6 or 3, what's called the short list, and then there's a competition fee, you know, maybe $100,000 US, and or less. It's getting less and less every year.
Yeah,
and so you get paid for like 4 weeks, 6 weeks worth of work, and you know, the render fees, all of this stuff is really expensive, and you actually don't make money on the competition fees. It's an investment a lot of the time. And then of course, if you win the project, then you get the commission, and that's where you make the money, is getting the commission. So a lot of offices are just floating, just barely keeping their head above water on competition fees. But it's so competitive because COVID, you know, everyone's competing in China now. Everyone and their grandmother is like trying to do a competition in China. And so the fees are going lower and lower, and architects are killing each other by accepting a lower fee. It's this never ending cycle.
Well, that's the way it is in this country too. It all boils down to the bottom line rather than the design. I think it's getting that way more and more. And as I say, it's just getting to be a service industry rather in here, at least, rather than an industry that's involved in the art of architecture. That's my big feeling.
Yeah,
at least I observe.
So there's basically, I used to think the design won the competition. It was all about design. I've gotten wiser. It's basically 3 things. It's the communication and the relationship, the client relationship. The second thing is the fee. And the third thing is design, basically in that order. And if you can come in with a low fee, with an amazing design, and it's somewhat buildable, you will win. So it's not really up to the design like it was in the early days. So yeah, China's really kind of matured and really kind of cutthroat. It's really tough market right now.
Well, join the club.
Yeah.
It's that way.
Rob, you have another question?
I do. I hope that's okay.
Yes.
So I'm sort of interested in your experience of sort of architectural thought within China. Are there what are the sort of the centers? I mean, like what we're doing now through a university, we're discussing architecture. How does that happen in China? And what are some of the? I mean, is there a? I'm actually not entirely sure. I think you're based in Shanghai. I mean, is there a Shanghai? Did I get that correct?
I'm in Beijing now. I have worked in Shanghai. I belong to the AIA Shanghai chapter. So there are international AIA branches. There's one in Hong Kong too. So the Shanghai. So yeah, there's a group of professionals that are called associate AIA members. You know, we have something called WeChat, which is maybe closest as WhatsApp, and like it's gotten way advanced and it has tons of like streams in it, and there's a lot about designs, and so there's all kinds of like design networks that you can subscribe to, like the zine or architectural blah blah blah. So there's architectural blogs. There's a lot of you know, foreign design firms that kind of come together and get together and do weekend walks. There's a lot of AIA is involved in that. There's the CTBUH, Committee for Tall and Urban Buildings and Habitats. I forget the exact name. That they put together a lot of forums where people speak and talk about their experience on tall buildings. There's a ULI Urban Land Institute. They do a bunch of conferences. So there is a developing network of professionals that like to share experiences and give talks and, you know, share. It's not just pictures, you know, on the internet, but like, so we learn a lot from that. And of course, just watching all the projects get built in the cities that you live in or travel to. I was at another city actually earlier today. I got up at 7, took a bullet train to the equivalent of like Cleveland, had a conference and then came back, and the bullet trains are so fast here, you can do a business trip in a day. You go out to the middle of China, and you know, there's just these amazing buildings when I came out of the train station that I had always seen pictures of, and then I see them in person. It's just an amazing experience. So yeah, that's another thing. We do business trips a lot, do proposals and get to see different cities. Yeah, there's so many ways to get involved and to learn from what's going on here. Is there anyone else? I'd love to. Yeah, go ahead.
I have to go. So
Okay. Thanks, Charlie. I'll catch up with you next time. I'll talk to you later.
Okay, well, great job. Thanks for filling us up. What?
Anyone else still on the call would like to ask a question? Text one. Did I miss any? No, I think I've answered all the text questions. Gabriel, do you have anything else you'd like to bring up? You're on mute. You're on mute. Gabriel, you're on mute. Or
I took some notes. I'd love to set up a time and meet and hang out.
yeah,
I really appreciated just sort of the scope of work. It's mind-boggling, sort of the speed at which work and the number of things. And I actually really appreciate your comments about basics like simplicity at the end. It actually seems to ring true, like that project that got built out of Zaha's office at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's such a clear, simple, it was shapely, but it was such a simple, straightforward idea. Really great to see that it made it into the world, in that manner.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, I just noticed someone named Jalen. I think you were trying to ask a question.
Quick question. I kind of came a little bit late I got I got the email earlier today from Dr. Campbell from the planning side of the program. I know this is mostly architecture based, but where would a planner fit if a planner wanted to go overseas and get involved in a private sector firm?
Oh my God, you have no idea how much master planning is going on in China. SOM does tons of master planning. That's basically how each of these offices gets work. They do a master plan for, maybe you miss it. They build a lot of CBDs and residential areas and like other urban areas. And KPF, SOM, they're some of the big players, Gensler, even our office does it. They do a master plan, and then from that, they will take the tall tower in the middle or the cultural building. So you can, you can go work in the office overseas and work, on those master plans, or you can work from New York or DC or Baltimore for any of these companies doing it. So there's all of these developing countries. Like, I wouldn't recommend Europe. I would recommend Asia. Right now, basically Asia, Middle East, and Africa are the three places where it's just really hot, still really hot, and there's lots of master planning going on. Even Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, there's a huge master plan going on that everyone's fighting to do because they're just going to be really amazing projects. I have a friend that worked at Zaha with me. He was an architect, and he just went back, got his master's in planning, and then he worked for Broadwin Malin, I think. It's a big planning firm out of London, and they have offices all over the world. And he's working on projects. He went down from London to Zimbabwe, then he went to Australia. He got to work on a couple projects around the world, and so yeah, I mean, the world's your oyster, really. If you reach out, if you get into one of these planning companies, just do your research. Like, who are the big players? Who's doing this stuff? Do an internship, and then ask to get either do an internship in USA and then ask to get moved overseas, or do like I did and try and get a job overseas in one of these offices.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? I didn't mean to cut you off, Gabriel. But, I was just really interested to get a student question again.
I think that's it. I need to get ready for my next thing at 2 o'clock.
Okay.
So, and let's see who's still on the call. So I see a couple of our professors. Any further questions? Otherwise, I think we should thank you for your time. And
my pleasure.
And as I said, I'd love to follow up by email and talk over the weekend.
Yeah, let's do that. We'll try and catch up real soon.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, my pleasure. I really enjoy it. I'd love to give back however I can. I've been thinking I had nothing to share for years, and Gabriel finally convinced me maybe I do have something to share.
You have more than one lecture in you.
It's been great. I hope I inspire someone to take a leap. Thanks, guys.